go to the wrong thing, why don't you? Jeez. Alright. Okay, so, people will show up eventually. They always do. It's always like 5-10 minutes in. Okay, so today is True Crime Thursday. I do true crime on Tuesdays and Thursdays now. Besides that, I usually just game afterward. Today we're talking about the vampire of Fresno, Marcus Wesson. Dude's messed up. He's a weird one. He's a part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. If anyone knows what Waco is, they were another sect of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So yeah, this is going to be fun. I love talking about religious psychos. Alrighty. Perfect. I already have it all set up. Okay, so this is Marcus Wesson, the guy in the orange. Dude is super duper creepy. I say as I switch to other things. Hold on a sec. Let me fix the music and yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
Alright, awesome. Perfect. Yay. Okay. It still only says 1 viewer after 5 minutes. Jeez. It's probably just me by now. Okay, yay. So I'm not alone. Either way, people will show up eventually. Alright, okay. So for starters, this guy killed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of his family members. Was it 11? Jesus. No, 9. I can't count. Whatever. Alright, so this man killed 9 members of his own family. And when I say members of his own family, I mean his children and the children he had with his children and the children he had with some of those children. Really, really gross. Trust me. This dude's gross. Alright, I have the other pictures of him on the side just so you guys have a constant image of like who this guy is in your head. Because he's a really, really weird one. When you get, he's not what you typically think of when you see most mass murderers. At least he's not what I think of. I think of the typical, average white man who went nuts. But I mean, maybe that's just my bias. Okay, anyway. Marcus Delon Wesson, born, okay, can you hear me? Is the music too loud or anything? Usually there's more people in here to tell me. I mean, yeah, right, he was keeping the killing in the family, but like, okay, what's really, really weird about this dude is that he was forming a little cult of his family. The dude thought he was a vampire, the guy thought he was Jesus, he then later on thought he was God. He married his own daughters, he had children with his own daughters, then went and killed them when the state came to, take custody of everyone. But either way, there's like a lot to this guy, and he's like really messed up. Marcus Delon Wesson, born August 22nd, 1946, let me make this a bit bigger for myself, is an American man convicted of 9 counts of first-degree murder and 14 sex crimes, including the rape and molestation of his underage daughters. All of his victims were his own children, fathered by incestuous relationships with his daughters and nieces, as well as the children by his wife. It is, to date, Fresno, California's worst mass murder. Oh my god, yeah, no, this dude has some actual serious mental health issues. I watched the Lights Out podcast on this guy, and I didn't see anyone else talking about him. And I went and did a little bit of research, and I'd like to know where they got the rest of the research, because they had so much more information than I could find, but those people are able to get, like, court documents and stuff like that. Alright. After a March 12, 2004 standoff with police over a child custody issue, the 9 bodies were discovered in a bedroom filled with antique coffins, each victim having been shot through the eye. But, okay, dude thought they were vampires, so why wouldn't he stake them? Because he wasn't as crazy as he acted like. Whatever. At his trial, Wesson offered his defense that his 25-year-old daughter, Sabrina? We're going with Sabrina. Whose 18-month-old son, Marshy, Wesson's own son and grandson, was killed as well, had herself committed the murders and then subsequently committed suicide. The murder, I mean, I would actually believe that with how well he had these people controlled. Hi, thanks for stopping by. I mean, did you get a notification? Or did you just know it was time and popped over? Because I've only got 2 viewers, and I'm actually kind of surprised by that. Usually we're a lot higher by now. And last time it did that to me, it had me blocked, and I didn't realize it. Well, I hope it doesn't have me muted or blocked, and everyone actually got a notification. We'll find out later. The murder weapon, a .22 caliber handgun, was found with her body, and Sabrina's DNA was found on the gun, which lent credence to Wesson's claim. Many potential jurors were excused from the trial after claiming to be terrified to be in the same room with Wesson. The jurors were terrified to be in the same room as him. Okay, you got the notification? You guys got the notification? Okay, that's awesome. Then it's just not showing me the real number because it still only says 2. And 3 people just responded. Twitch, you need to do better. Maybe not in the chat section, mostly with the hate bots, but like also do better with the chat. Many potential jurors were excused from the trial after claiming to be terrified to be in the same room as Wesson. Wesson was convicted of 9 counts of first-degree murder in June 2017 and was also found guilty on 14 counts of forcible sexual assault and the sexual molestation of 7 of his own underage daughters and nieces. Wesson was sentenced to the death penalty on June 27, 2005. I thought all this happened in the 80s. I am really confused that this was this recent. Okay, that's a really good thing to know. Marcus Dylan Wesson, born August 22nd, 1946, was a man convicted of 9... Didn't I just read that? Rape and molestations, victims were his own children, fathered by his incestuous relationships with his daughters and nieces, as well as the children by his wife. He had been described as Fresno's worst mass murderer. Yeah, I know. That is way more recent than I thought. I thought it was in the early 80s, so I'm genuinely a little confused by that. Prior to March 12, 2004, Wesson had declared his intention to relocate his daughters and their children to Washington State, where Wesson's parents lived. On March 12, 2004, several members of Wesson's extended family, along with his 2 daughters who rebelled against Wesson, converged on his family compound, demanding the release of Wesson's other children. Dude, they let it go on for, like, a long time, though. Because, like, some of these girls were grown. Hi, Holly. Thank you so much for the lurk. Fresno police were summoned to what was described as a child custody issue. Well, that had to have been terrifying for the cops. Like, oh yeah, no, we're just coming here to deal with some kids. Oh God, shooting at us. I'm sorry, that's probably inappropriate. Described as a child custody issue, and a standoff ensued. During the course of the standoff, Wesson, who had first appeared cooperative to the police, was permitted to step away and go back into the house. Fresno police testified that they did not hear gunshots being fired shortly after, though other witnesses present at the standoff testified that they did hear gunshots fired off at the time. In the aftermath, 9 bodies of Wesson's daughters and their children were discovered in a bedroom filled with antique coffins. Each victim had been shot through the eye. Authorities, relatives, and public records suggest he had fathered up to 18 children with 7 women. I don't know why they're calling them women. They were literally kids. Literally little girls. Wesson's other children, who were not present inside the house, survived the incident. At his trial, Wesson, presented by public defenders Peter Jones and Ralph Torres, presented the defense that his 25-year-old daughter, Sabrina, whose 18-month-old son, Marshy, Wesson's own son and grandson, was killed as well. You're just repeating the same thing. Bodies of 7 children aged 8 and younger were discovered after Marcus Wesson, 56, surrenders and is arrested after a 2-hour standoff Saturday, March 13, 2004. A small home near Roding Park, where authorities had found a stack of 9 bodies in one room and 10 caskets in another. Fresno police on Friday arrested a man suspected of fathering some of the victims and murdering them all. Police arrested Marcus Weston, 57, on suspicion of homicide after a 2-hour standoff in an established neighborhood near Olive Avenue and Golden State Boulevard. Authorities replayed a twisted scene of the death at the house, with the bodies of the young women and small children intertwined with clothing and stacked together in a back bedroom. Well, how did they all get stacked? That's a good question. Sheesh is fucking right, dog. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. The bodies were so entangled that it took hours for police to confirm the number of dead. Police Chief Jerry Dreyer said there have been some kind of ritual involved. There may have been some kind of ritual involved, but we have to make sure of that determination. In a scene that began shortly after 10 p.m. and was expected to continue into the early morning, authorities began removing the bodies of 2 women and 7 children, including infants. Some bodies were so small that they were carried out in white body bags, cradled in the arms of officials. The majority of victims were female, one in her 20s, one about 17, and children ranging from 1 to 8. Authorities did not release the identity of the victims or the causes of death. They did not know whether they were killed in the house or elsewhere. Police believe Wesson had blood on his shirt when he surrendered. A man who identified himself only as Mike, who said that he was one of Wesson's brother-in-law, and Wesson thought he was God. This is not going into... I hope it goes into the crazy bit soon. Other police acknowledged that they were investigating a possible cult angle. Possible. It was a cult. That's a lot. That's my thing. Okay, so it took 2 hours. Okay, first and foremost, if it started off as a standoff, and 2 hours into the standoff, he just goes inside and comes back out with, let's say, like an hour, and they heard gunshots. They claim they didn't hear gunshots, but if the surrounding witnesses all say that they heard gunshots, he shot all of them, or had Sabrina? Let me check that. Where am I looking for her name? Where am I looking for her name? Where am I looking for her name? Yes, Sabrina April Wesson. Okay. Yeah, literally, several neighbors reported hearing gunshots. One police officer said that one of the victims appeared to have been shot. Police responded to a child custody dispute at the home of 761 West Hammond Avenue at about 2:30 p.m. And then they said it lasted till 10 p.m. Okay, so from 2:30 p.m. to 10 p.m., then, okay, why would they even let it hold on that long? And then secondly, if they heard a gunshot, why wouldn't they flood the building? See, that's my thing. Like, stacked or tossed in the pile, but like, let's say it takes a full 2 minutes to shoot each kid. You got to walk from kid to kid to kid, and you got to shoot them, and then you're going to pick them up and throw them in a pile. So at the very least, we're going to say that all takes about an hour. Also considering that some of these were the adults, not just the children. It said that 2 adult women were like at the bottom of the pile, and there were a bunch of children on top. That's a long time for the cops not to storm the building. Like, what the fuck were they doing the entire time? Just sitting outside eating goddamn donuts? 2 women told officers they had given custody of their children to Wesson and wanted them back. Why are people always handing their kids off to someone else? How? How are you handing your children off to some dude who says he's God? No one went, yep, nope, that's totally okay. He says he's God. He'll protect my child. They get paid to do the cleanup after the fact. I mean, true, you don't get paid to save lives. That's sadly accurate. Other women have said they left their children in Wesson's... what? 2 women told officers they had given custody of their child to Wesson and wanted them back. Wesson allegedly refused. Other women have said they left their children in Wesson's custody, authorities said. So how many of these were his kids and how many of these were just kids he was diddling? Because, yeah, no, he was diddling the girls. Which is how all of them were incestuous. Several neighbors reported hearing gunshots. Oh, I just read that. Neighbors Linda Morales, 44, said she heard 2 to 3 gunshots, followed by screaming between 2:30 and 3 p.m. Friday. I started shaking because I have 2 girls in the home with me. She said, I just got a jingling in me. It could have been my girls. It's just too close. All right, okay, so the thing that they're not putting in here is that they were in, like an apartment complex, and he had barricaded himself to 2 apartments that they had torn the wall down between to make one giant apartment. So when they say neighbor, they mean the dude right there. The people right across the hall from them. And the people across the hall had heard all their shit all the must have had a silver tongue. I don't believe any of these people are that convincing. I believe the people they're dealing with might not always be the smartest, and they're preying upon that. Because how do you let yourself hand your child over to a fucking stranger? Just God. When police arrived, Weston ran into the house and locked himself inside. Authorities called in the SWAT team, and after about 2 hours, Weston walked outside and surrendered. Alright, so 2 hours from 3, which made it 5. Where is the other 5 hours? Distraught at the news, some relatives of the dead collapsed near the house. At least 1 woman was taken away by ambulance. Dreyer said later that 4 women who gathered outside the house were the mothers of some of the victims, and Wesson was the father. Okay, so they handed the father off to the dad. They really need to write these things better sometimes. Dozens of people gathered outside the house during the afternoon and into the evening. A young man who identified himself only as a relative of a victim leaned against a brick wall not far from the tape, blocking the house. Head bowed and crying, he ignored questions and attempted to get into the parked green Chevrolet Cavalier. Another man had to help him into the car. They did not drive away, but just sat in the car. I mean, yeah, you gotta close yourself off and process. Another man standing about 15 feet from the young man also identified himself only as a family member of the victims. He said, no one is going to be talking about this. Right now, everyone is really upset. I mean, but y'all need to start explaining yourselves. Who was he? What was he doing? Why was he doing? He cried as he spoke. The bodies were found in roughly 1,000 square foot, 1-story home built in 1966. Okay, hold on. This wasn't a 1-story home. It was a duplex from everything that the Lights Out podcast was saying. And it had been a duplex that was split up into apartments. So that's a little confusing. State property records show the house was sold to Rosa Solorio last September for $100,000. Neighbors said Wesson moved in about 6 to 8 months ago. Police said they found 10 unused caskets in the front room of the house. A friend of Wesson's children said they had been in the home for a long time. A relative said Wesson intended to use the wood for furniture. Oh, yeah, sure. No, we're not going to touch on the part where this dude literally said he was a vampire and his children were vampires. Lawyer Frank Muna said he saw the caskets in an antique shop several years ago. They were unique, he said, hand-carved in rich wood and larger than normal. The shop owner told... Okay, what antique shop just has a coffin? Because I need to go there. I want a coffin. The shop owner told Muna he sold them to Wesson, who had purchased the property from Muna a few years ago. I'm sorry, Mr. Muna should have known better. What was going on? You didn't question this man at all? Muna said he always saw several women with Wesson, but the relationships were unclear. He also didn't know what Wesson did for a living, but he said that the man had the same school bus at the time he knew him. Oh yeah, he didn't do anything. They completely lived off the state. The school bus was parked outside the Hammond house Friday evening. Neighbors said they saw and heard Wesson in the bus only after sunset and well past midnight. Sometimes children would hold a flashlight so that he could work. One neighbor said he thought there was a whirlpool spa in the bus. What the fuck? Why would there be a whirlpool spa in the bus? That's weird. Neighbor Christina Morales, 22, said she saw 3 adult women who wore black dresses working on the bus with Wesson. If they walked away, she said he would pull them back by their shoulder or hair. Mike, the man who identified himself as Weston's brother-in-law, said Weston was a Vietnam veteran originally from San Jose. Kenny Isaac, 35, who had lived in the neighborhood for 13 years, described the home's residents, including up to 6 women, as weird. I only saw the older women, he said. They would drive by and they would glance down. They did not want to look at you. One neighbor said that the women typically wore black skirts, white or gray blouses, and black high-heeled shoes. Lupa Montejado, 38, and Lucida Juarez, the sex wagon. I mean, if the incest bus is a rockin', dear God, go and knock and help somebody. Jesus. I'm sorry, not Jesus. I guess we're gonna say Marcus for this. Sweet Marcus. Juarez said they were quiet people. You wouldn't expect this to happen. Barbara Alex, 61, who lived near the home, said she noticed people arriving for what seemed to be a gathering at the house Friday afternoon. Then she heard a woman yell from the direction of the house, "It wasn't supposed to happen this way." She also said she wasn't supposed to happen this way. That lady sounds like she knows more than what she's saying. She also said residents of the home cooked something with a particularly foul odor 2 or 3 times a week. It smelled real ugly. Everyone complained, but we never thought anything about it. They were probably boiling bodies. Every time you hear someone say, "Oh, they were cooking something that smelled weird," it's always a body. Oh my God, why don't you people call the police more often? Like, I'm not a cop caller, but call the cops. Alex said she was shaken by the killings. I'm so scared now. Why? They arrested him. After 9 p.m., police were beginning a search of the home, and they were also planning to search the school bus. At 10:30, coroners began to wheel bodies out on a gurney. Okay, so it took them 4 hours to get into the house, because if the standoff started at 2:33 and it ended at 5, and they didn't go until 9, what's going on there? Oh yeah, Ragtag. It's True Crime Thursday. You came into some shit. We are talking about Marcus Wesson, who is the vampire incest psycho of Fresno. Yeah. Let's have fun. Let the bodies hit the girl. Oh, come on. Only semi-inappropriate. Investigators waited several hours before beginning a close examination of the house and the bus. The delay allowed authorities to get the proper search warrants. Did they even need one? Did they even need a search warrant? You see the guy who killed his kids the other day? Oh my God, okay, so I'm talking about him Tuesday. I thought about talking about him today, but I didn't get to read all the information. I'm also going to do the guy who killed his own teenage son because he found pictures of him wearing a diaper and eating his own shit. That'll be next Thursday. I like talking about weirdos. But yeah, I'm totally doing the QAnon guy, because, like, fuck him, fuck his thought process, and fuck him. Dude, he killed his kid because he thought that the mom had given his kid serpent DNA. Which, one, how do you give a kid serpent DNA? And secondly, doesn't that mean that you yourself were married to a reptilian, you fucking numbskull? But instead of killing your wife, which I guess would have made a little bit more sense, or killing yourself for being a fucking idiot, no, you decided to kill your infant child because you're an ass. The mother had the serpent DNA? Well, yeah, that's what I just said. So, like, why kill your kid? Why? You could have made your kid a sleeper agent. You could have made him an undercover. You could have taught your kid to be an agent for the humankind. But no, he kills the kid. I don't respect his line of thought to begin with. So yeah, we're definitely going to talk about him, and we're going to shit on him the entire time. I hate people who hurt children. Back to this asshole who hurts children. Investigators waited several hours before police closed off a square quarter-mile around the house during the standoff. Traffic was snarled on Olive Avenue. The area was sealed off until about 6:30 p.m. You guys didn't even go into the house until 9. This whole timeline sounds like a fuck up. After the streets reopened, people started gathering and milling on the street. Yellow police tape circled roughly 200 feet around the house. Police planned to work through the night gathering evidence. There were still bodies inside the house as of midnight. So at 10 they started wheeling out bodies, and by midnight they hadn't wheeled out all the bodies, but they're only 9 killings. Dreyer said it would probably take another 3 hours before all the bodies were removed. Mayor Alan Outtree arrived just before 11:30, telling reporters, "This is obviously a terrible, horrific tragedy. It appears we have the perpetrator in custody. The only thing we can do now is mourn. We mourn for the kids. We mourn for the police who had to be out here. We mourn for the community." But not the mothers who left. I mean, they did leave their children. I don't know how much I'd mourn for them as people. Dreyer said he will appear on the Today Show at 4. Really? Jesus. "I hesitated whether or not to do that," Dreyer said. "I think it's important for the people of America to know that this is an aberration for Fresno." The 9 deaths represented the largest mass killing in Fresno since 1993, the year I was born, when 7 people were killed in the Carlito Club murders in rural Fresno. Oh yeah, they never figured out who killed the Carlito Club. Carlito Club. Why did I say Carlito? That is not Carlito. I can't read. I'm literally sitting here reading and I can't read. Domineering father of large incestuous clown found guilty of murder. June 17, 2005, CBS News. Fresno, California. Marcus Weston, the domineering patriarch of a large incestuous clan, was convicted Friday of murdering 9 of his children, whose bodies were found in a bloody pile last year at the end of the police standoff. Wesson, 58, could get the death penalty. That means he hasn't even been killed yet. That's so fucking scary. The jury took more than 2 weeks to find Wesson guilty on 9 counts of first-degree murder. He was also convicted of all 14 counts of raping and molesting 7 of his underage daughters and nieces. The defense had argued that Sabina Wesson, 25, the oldest to die, killed herself as well as her siblings and the 1-year-old son she had with her father. Prosecutors said Marcus Wesson was the trigger man, but also argued that even if Sabrina did the shooting, her father would at least be found guilty if he encouraged her to kill. The jurors accepted the prosecution's second theory. They found Wesson guilty, even though they decided the government did not prove he pulled the trigger. That's actually really hard, because most times, like when Manson was sentenced, he wasn't sentenced with the murders. He was sentenced with conspiracy to murder. Several witnesses had testified that Weston had repeatedly coached the children to be ready to kill each other and themselves if authorities ever threatened to break up the clan. Wow. Many of the Weston surviving family members still support him and stifled sobs as a clerk read the verdicts. Weston remained quiet and still. The jury will return on Wednesday for the penalty phase. The slayings were the worst murder ever, blah, blah, blah. Officers are summoned home. Weston talked to officers at the front door. Weston talked with officers at the front door, then went into the back bedroom and shut the door. About an hour and 20 minutes later, he emerged. Oh, okay, so they were like halfway in the building, I guess. So then they would have most definitely heard gunshots. What the fuck? In the bedroom was a bloody pile of corpses, each shot through the eye. Officers pulled out the bodies of Sabrina Wesson and 8 others ranging from age 1 to 17. No fingerprints or gunshot residue indicated who fired the weapon, but Wesson's surviving children testified that he wielded a high degree of control over his large clan. He preached to the family daily, weaving a dogma of polygamy and incest from his interpretations of the Bible and Seventh-day Adventist belief. Okay, finally, are we getting into the good stuff? I mean, not like the good stuff, but like the reason behind the why. He was particularly severe with the young women who testified they were homeschooled and had almost no contact with anyone else outside the family. No, quite literally. Like, some of the children had never actually spoken to anyone outside their family, which is like a very scary thought when you think about that. Weston beat them for speaking with men and molested them from age 7 or 8. He also took any money they earned and dictated what they could and could not eat. During 2004 and 2005, Americans were fixated on Scott Peterson's murder of his wife and unborn son. News channels reported breathlessly on the smallest developments of the investigation and trial, scrutinized Mr. Peterson and his mistress Amber Frey and the lawyers' performances. The national media has virtually ignored another case that was even stranger and more shocking: Marcus Wesson's murder of his 9 children in Fresno, California. Yeah, no, seriously, like, no one reported on this except for the people in California, and that, I also find that very concerning. Mr. Wesson carried on incestuous relations with several of his daughters and nieces for years, brainwashed the family into believing he was a messiah, and made a murder-suicide pact with them. The media's silence must certainly be due to the fact that Mr. Wesson is black. Must certainly be due? Why is it because he's black? The media has no other problem talking about black people killing any other time, or because this doesn't fit a narrative. The media soft pedal news about black crime because editors do not want to show non-whites in an unflattering light. What the fuck? They literally do all the time. You guys didn't want to talk about something this complicated, or you had a white person to pay attention to. Just call it what it is. People who have known Marcus Wesson say he is highly eccentric and moderately intelligent. Oof, imagine someone saying you're moderately intelligent. He has a large vocabulary and expresses himself in flowery language. He undoubtedly has an unusual influence on others. In 1968, Mr. Wesson left the Army, which had sent him to Europe as a medical orderly, and moved to San Jose, California. Then in his 20s, he moved in with a Hispanic woman, Rosemary Mayatrona, who was in her 30s, and the two had one son. In 1974, Mr. Wesson married Rosemary's daughter, Elizabeth, who was 15 at the time. Okay, so they're not throwing in. He didn't just marry the 15-year-old. He convinced his then wife, Rosemary, that was his spiritual wife and that she was born for him. He convinced her that she was a better wife and that Rosemary was supposed to deliver her daughter to him. He literally convinced this woman to hand over her daughter's hand in marriage and still be the main wife. Like, she was his legal wife the entire time. He also married Rosemary illegally, but she was also his legal wife. And, oh my god, like, oh, this dude's so gross. So gross. Over the next 16 years, he had 10 children with her. His wife Elizabeth had a sister named Rosemary Solerio. Okay, so we have Rosemary Maya and Rosemary Soli. Okay, Rosemary M and Rosemary S, who also appears to have been under Mr. Wesson's spell. In 1986, okay, so yeah, like I was right, this started in the 80s. In 1986, she sent her 7 children to live with the Wessons. She sent 7 kids to live with this man. The children who had been molested in their own home and were reportedly happy to make the change. Oh, imagine going from one molested home to a psychotic home. The result was a household of considerable size. I like how you say considerable size, but we don't give us an actual number. Mr. Wesson could not keep up with a steady job and got most of his income from welfare. Like I said, they were living on the state. The family drifted from... Shush. The family drifted from place to place, and some of its living arrangements were intensive. At one point, the family lived in a 26-foot boat moored by stationed in the Santa Cruz Harbor. Mr. Wesson sometimes scavenged hamburgers out of the McDonald's dumpsters for his family to eat. So, like, you wouldn't get a job, you thought you were the Messiah, but you're dumpster diving for your, like, clan of 20. The boat got him in trouble, however. He failed to list it as an asset on his welfare forms and went to jail for welfare fraud in 1990. And no one left and ran away. In the mid and late 1990s, the family lived in a trailer and a large army tent in the Santa Cruz Mountains. They lived in an army tent? How many people did he have living in a tent? Hell, I've had to live in a tent and 2 people was fucking too much. On which land with large army tent in the Santa Cruz Mountains, on land with no running water. I mean, when you're living in a tent, you usually don't have running water. The Westons also lived for a time in a decaying 63-foot tugboat off the shore of Marin County, California. What's with this dude living in boats? Well, you know boats can only hold so much weight, right? And you got like 20 people in there. Sometimes they lived in a school bus. By the late 1990s, the children of Marcus and Elizabeth Weston were old enough to work, and Mr. Weston used their money to buy the Fresno building in which the murders took place. I don't remember him buying it. I remember him renting it, but, I mean, what have you. Sorry, I'm literally double working at the moment. None of the children ever went to school. Mr. Wesson taught them at home using flashcards, school textbook, and his own brand of Christianity. Oh yeah, no, I'm scared when someone says they have their own brand of Christianity. He became fascinated with David Koresh, the Waco murders, or the Waco incident, if you will. I happen to believe that the government was very much in the wrong there. Whether or not they were a cult, the way they stormed it and handled it was horrible. Fascinated with David Koresh during the siege at Waco, Texas in 1993, the year I was born, and made his family into his own personal cult. He described himself as Jesus Christ and police officers as Satan. I mean, I ain't against the police officers as Satan 90% of the time. When the family watched television coverage of the Branch Davidian siege, Mr. Wesson told the children, "This is how the world is attacking God's people. This man is just like me. He's making children for the Lord. That's what we should be doing, making children for the Lord." Oh, God. Ew. Mr. Wesson taught his family how to be prepared to die if anyone ever tried to break up the household. He told his niece, Rosa S., and his daughter, Sabrina Wesson, they were strong soldiers who would hunt down and kill family members who betrayed him and who might have to kill the family and themselves to prevent a breakup. Wait, did he kill any of his other kids before this? Or what the hell is going on, man? Possibly in anticipation of such a massacre, Mr. Wesson bought 10 coffins from an antique dealer. I still want to know how this dude didn't ask any questions. Mr. Wesson was also fascinated by vampires, there we go, and gave himself and his daughters and nieces vampire names. His name for himself was Jevem Markspur. Jevem Markspur. Okay, I know I'm reading that stupid. A mixture of Jesus, Marcus, and vampire. Oh God, it wasn't even creative, you ass. You weeb? You're not even good enough to be a weeb with a name that bad. Are you kidding me? Jevamar Skirpire. Okay, Jevamar Skirpire. It's like Markiplier, but Jeva R word. The mean R word people call me sometimes. Mr. Weston began sleeping with his daughters and nieces after he got out of jail in 1990. According to a trial testimony of Ruby Ortiz, niece Solero was one of the nieces sent to live with the Wessons. Mr. Weston began molesting her when she was just 8. Mrs. Ortiz testified that she loved Mr. Weston at the time and at age 13 enthusiastically agreed to marry him. The marriage ceremony consisted of the couple putting their hands on the Bible and reciting marriage vows. Mr. Wesson married 3 of his nieces and 2 daughters this way and had children by all of them. Ugh. God, ew. Mr. Wesson fully approved of these Mrs. Weston, that's Rosemary M., fully approved of these incestuous unions. In fact, when Ruby Solero ran away from the home as a teenager, Mrs. Wesson persuaded her to come back to the house to take care of her son by Mr. Wesson. Why didn't she run away with the baby? Man, just run away with the baby. God. Mrs. Ortiz testified that Mr. Wesson could be cruel and jealous. He isolated his children from the outside world and beat her with a stick or baseball bat when she talked to boys or didn't learn her lessons. Oh, I was so confused. I thought I heard my dog whine behind me. Despite the abuse, many in the family fondly remember their days with Mr. Wesson. He devised entertainment for the family, such as plays, concert, and ugly contests, in which the children would dress up to be as ugly as possible. No comment, bro. I'ma just refer to said image when we're gonna be talking about ugly contests. Like, for real, dog. Despite this abuse, The Wessons spooked their neighbors. Mr. Wesson weighed about 400 pounds, and one neighbor in the Fresno described his hair as one big, long, greasy dreadlock. Ew, that's mean. It was just caked in dirt and oil. Is that just someone being a little racist? Or, like, nah. I mean, it do kind of look like one big dreadlock. It doesn't look separated or cared for. It just looks like you don't shower. But you guys didn't have running water for like a good bit of that, so I wouldn't be surprised. Mr. Wesson would go out with the family. The women wore dark robes and walked behind him in silence with their eyes downcast. When the Wessons lived on the tugboat, the girls would row Mr. Wesson ashore and back. They rowed him like they were slaves, said one neighbor. I had pegged him as some sort of Jonestown cult. And you didn't call the police? You literally saw a Jonestown cult and you didn't call the police. There is no shame in calling the police on cult people. All the boys in the family moved out of the house when they were old enough, as did most of the girls. However, he was never worried about them bringing back the cops or some shit. However, two of the daughters, Sabrina Wesson and Elizabeth Brenny Wesson, and one of the nieces, Rosa S., stayed with their father into adulthood, supporting the family. There were also several young children still in the house. In 2003, the Wessons bought a house in Fresno that had once been an office building. City authorities moved to evict the family because it was a non-residential building. The prospect of eviction may have played some part in the participation of the murders. Mr. Wesson probably saw it as a part of a plot against him and his family, but the primary trigger for the murders was March 12, 2004 visit from Ruby Ortiz and Sofina Solerio, two nieces who had moved out of the household, and wanted Mr. Wesson to give them their daughters. He refused, and the family shouted curses at the two women, calling them Judas, whore, and Lucifer. The two women left without their children and returned with the police. Officers ordered Mr. Wesson to come out, but he fled inside the building. The police called the city attorney. Oh, shit. The city called the city attorney, who told them they had no legal right to go inside. Then Rosa Solerio and Mrs. Wesson came out of the building and reported Mr. Wesson had a gun. Police backup and SWAT team arrived. Just as they were taking positions around the house, Mr. Wesson emerged covered in blood and surrendered. Relatives of the victims blamed police for not taking action sooner. Okay, so I'm along the right lines. What the police found inside was so horrific that some of them went on administrative leave or into counseling. I would hope so. That's a lot of dead kids. The 9 bodies of Mr. Wesson's children, who were all shot through one eye, were tangled up in the bloody pile of clothing. The victims ranged in age from 1 to 25. It said 1 to 17. But I guess we're including the oldest daughter, Sabrina, who was 25. 2 were Mr. Wesson's daughter. The other 7 were children of his daughters and nieces, all of whom were under 8 years of age. They were all still his kids. Let's not miscalculate that. The 10 coffins Mr. Wesson had bought lined the wall of one of the rooms. That 9/6 police chaplains reported to the building to sue the detectives gathering the evidence. The mayor of Fresno said the city would never be the same again after the largest mass killing in history. It is possible that Mr. Wesson did not commit the murders. His lawyers said it was strong soldier Sabrina Wesson who shot the others and then killed herself. She was on top of the 9 bodies and the gun was underneath her. Police found no gun residue on Mr. Wesson. Even if he did not fire the weapon, however, prosecutors say he could still get the death penalty for conspiracy to commit murder and aiding and abetting murder. So that's how they got him. Fresno means ashtray and reminiscent culture, climate. Fresno reported 42 homicides and 3,780 total violent crimes in 2002. There were 36 murders in Fresno last year, down 14% from the year before. In the first 2.5 months of 2004, the city had only 3 murders, the fewest in more than 3 decades, and a California paper reported. Oh, that's unfortunate, isn't it? You almost had a good year, and then it very quickly switched to a bad year. Responding to a child custody dispute, we got all that. Weston initially ignored the instructions. Officer Jerry Dreyer, the scene. I've never experienced anything of this nature. The crime was so gruesome, many of the officers were placed on administrative leave. So 1 to 8, 20-year-old woman, and a 17-year-old girl. They cannot get these ages right to save their fucking life. Police attempted to piece together a grisly puzzle. Wesson, who remained in custody with bail set at $9 million, remained calm and cooperative with police. Law enforcement spent hours at the crime scene gathering evidence. Identifying the bodies was difficult since some of the women involved were afraid to come forward. As new information was unveiled, it became clear that the sordid details leading up to the tragic ending of 9 lives was laced with words like polygamy, incest, rituals, and cults. Friends and neighbors described the family as odd and were suspicious of Wesson. There may have been as many as 6 different mothers involved, and the household seemed to operate as a commune. The women worked to support Wesson and lived by strict rules made by Wesson. Their lifestyle included homeschooling, modest clothing, and rejecting America's normal way of life. However, 2 of his sons said they were raised as Seventh-day Adventists, which is the first time they mention the Seventh-day Adventist Church. There are so many cults involved in the Seventh-day Adventists, it's incredibly disturbing to me. Over the years, Weston had led his clan from a squatter's camp in the mountains to a dilapidated sailboat in inland California. He believed he didn't have to work. God would take care of him. That's how he always preached to us. He bought several mahogany caskets. According to Lois Dugbook, shop owner, Wesson planned on using the wood to repair a boat. He left the caskets at the store for nearly a year, and when he came to pick them back up, the girls dutifully loaded each of the caskets into a yellow school bus. A casket ain't light, bro. A casket's heavy as hell. I've been a pallbearer. It sucked. It sucked for a lot of reasons, but it was heavy. Police removed the caskets as evidence as of Monday the 15th. That's not even says as of. Arraignment is set for Wednesday, March 17th at 1:30. Fresno Police Chief Jerry Dreyer said that authorities were not ruling out that more than one person was involved. Toxicology tests to see whether the victims were drugged were pending on the victims. Law enforcement was investigating all angles, including whether Wesson was involved in a cult. Certainly the lifestyle they chose and the fact that Wesson fathered most of the children leads anyone to wonder about this dysfunctional family structure. As stories continue to surface about the family, it's probably safe to profile Marcus Wesson as domineering, manipulative, charismatic, and one who ruled his family with an ironclad fist, isolating them from human contact and requiring each of them their full and total devotion. He told more than one person he was God. 2 of his sons claimed he was a good father and they were raised as Seventh-day Adventists, but this religion was quick to wash their hands of Wesson, answering in length the allegations that Wesson was a member. Carol Oswald, Director in Communication for the Central California Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, said that as far as they could tell, Marcus Wesson was never a member of their religious organization, although Wesson had sporadic contact with the Adventist Church and his parents were members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He was a janitor at the Sequoia campgrounds in the 80s and early 90s, and on occasion brought his children to church services. Several of his extended family, Sabrea Wesson, Kaya Wesson, Sofina Solero, and Ruby Sanchez, were members of the church. Oh, that's interesting. It's True Crime Thursday. I'm trying to do True Crime on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The picture of Marcus Wesson that has emerged is one of a psychopath similar to David Koresh or Charles Manson. He manipulated the people he chose to be bound within his inner circle and used his religious faith to help foster his world. Anyone can take a religious theme and distort it for his or her perverted ideals. This appears to be what Wesson has done with the sole intent of establishing control. Marcus Wesson's oldest son, 29-year-old Dorian Wesson of Santa Cruz, offered support to his father and said it doesn't just seem like him to do it. Really? Because from every account, this sounds exactly like him. I mean, like, the girls were working on the bus and he was yanking them by their hair. They're over here dressed like Muslim girls in Saudi Arabia. You're shitting me, Dorian Wesson. What the fuck, man? He told reporters, "I can't give you an intelligent answer." You're damn right you can't give an I'm sorry. I know he's a victim too. I'll back up that attitude. Just, there are signs of this kind of shit. There are always signs of this kind of shit. You have to be rose-colored. You have to be wearing rose-colored glasses to not see the big red flags. I just don't think he's entirely responsible. What was? Crack? He added that if he thought his father was capable of killing children, he would have stopped it. I don't think you would have. He talked about the family and said his sisters had that his sisters had artificial inseminations. I'm sorry. That had artificial inseminations when they're living in a dilapidated boat and getting kicked out for living in an office building? Where did they afford the artificial insemination? Or are you just covering for your dad, dude? What the f... He said his father was related to 5 of the dead children, but the other 2 were from another family. So you still established that 5 out of 7 or 5 out of 9 were still his incestuous kids. Or maybe you're just trying to cover up the incest. I don't know. But a sister-in-law of the suspected murderer said he was evil and controlling. Okay, I believe the sister-in-law. She believes he killed the children because he didn't want them taken away from him. Oh, his nice little paycheck. Teresa Solero said that was the ultimate control of their life, whether they lived or died. Fresno B. She said that Ruby and Sophia were raised by Marcus and Elizabeth and that their lives were filled with sexual abuse. Ruby and Sophiana were, I'm sorry, I said Sophia, meant Sophiana, were able to break free from Marcus' stronghold, but they left their children. Why did you leave your children? Right? So super gross. This dude sucks. Like, fucking vampire bitch my ass. Carrie Wesson, mother of Marcus Wesson, also spoke out. The Marcus Wesson on TV, I don't recognize. That's not my son. This is a Christian family. This is not a cult. Did you have anything to do with this? Miss Carrie? She described Marcus as a bright, intelligent child who loved animals. He and his family avoided dances, dressed modestly, and were vegetarians. Yeah, so you were raised in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I'm sorry, but there are so many sects of the Christian church that just raise fucked up people because the beliefs are fucked up. The way you control your kids are fucked up. Authorities are using DNA to identify the victims. Coroner said that it doesn't appear as though any of the victims struggled and the bodies were not mutilated. At an afternoon news conference on March 22nd, Fresno Police Chief Dreyer stated, "The cause of death for each individual is unique and consistent." Death certificates were filed with the Fresno County Department of Health for Sabrina April Wesson, 25, mother of Elizabeth. Elizabeth Brianne Keena Wesson, 17, mother. Isabel Carey Wesson, 8, mother. Keani Wesson. Ethan St. Loris Wesson, 4, mother. Rosie. Sedono Vadra Wesson, 1.5, mother. Rosie. Marshy St. Christopher Wesson, 1.5, mother. Sabrina. Jeva St. Vladin Svetsky? Vladins Svespris. I ain't trying that again. Sorry, kid. Jeva St. Vlad. 1. Okay, so the youngest one was only like a year. Mother Keani Wesson. The death certificate for Aviv Dominique Wesson, mother Ruby Sanchez, and Jonathan St. Charles Wesson, mother Sophiana, both 7, have not been yet filed. Why? Because of the cause of death was determined to be immediate perforation of brain caused by gunshot wounds to the face. Isabel died of a contusion to the brain after being shot in the face. Dude's pathetic. All 9 victims were fathered by Wesson, even his daughters Sabrina and Keani, and 3 of his nieces, Sofina Solero, Ruby Sanchez, and Rosie Solerio. A source close to the investigation said they will be cremated Wednesday at Belmont Memorial Park in Fresno and their ashes returned to their families. Community support has been overwhelming with donations directed toward the victims' families and large memorial outside the crime scene. Meanwhile, Wesson has delayed his arraignment twice, insisting that he does not want a public defender, but wants to hire his own lawyers. With what money? David McGridge and Gary Harvey. However, it was unclear whether Wesson could afford his own attorney. According to a jail report, guards have to watch March, I think they meant Marcus, 24 hours a day, and he is to have no contact with any of his family. It has been rumored that a suicide pact exists between March and his extended family. Why do you keep calling him March? Marcus and his extended family. He doesn't want to leave behind any evidence of incest or polygamy. I don't think polygamy is the real problem there, dude. I really don't. On Wednesday, April 7th, 33, more charges of sexual abuse were filed against Weston. Evidence collected at the scene includes a gun. Gunpowder residue tests were conducted on Weston and at least one of the victims, and fingerprint tests were collected on the gun itself. Letters written by Marcus Weston 15 years ago to a judge in Santa Cruz County after his conviction of perjury and welfare fraud were obtained by Action News. The letter is nearly 80 pages. Jesus Christ. The judge doesn't want to read 80 pages. My throat hurts. As I sit here and read 80 pages to you. A whole ass hour of me reading this. Show a man who's felt the system was against him. In one letter, Weston says, I know the welfare department illegally obtained the information because I, posing as the actor Richard Wildmark, called the tax office because I wanted to find out why the boat was in my name instead of my wife's. Ironically, the actor Richard Widmark portrayed murdering a psychopath in The Kiss of Death. Bonjour, Dahmer. We're doing TrueKnot. Sorry. Hi, Dahmer. We're doing true crime. Perfect time for you to show up. You missed most of it, but like, this dude's a psycho. Like an actual legit incestuous thinks he's a fucking vampire and he's Jesus psycho and murdered his 9 children. And wives. Children wives. They were both. You was getting tacos? We'll share. If you bring tacos for the entire group, okay? Not just for you. I brought coffee for all of us. You can have a sip. I wanted to find out why the boat was in my name instead of my wife's. Ironically, okay. At Weston's preliminary hearing, he pled not guilty, and Weston's public defense lawyer, Pete Jones, said he didn't do it. Oh, thank you, Pete. At the hearing, Jones questioned police officers regarding the .22 caliber gun and hunting knife found at the scene under the oldest victim's body, 25-year-old Sabrina. Y'all keep calling her 20, so what is she, 20 or 25? Went to school with some people like this? Bro, I think we all secretly went to school with people like this and don't even know it. I think there are more psychos in our daily lives than we have any fucking idea of, for real. Like, these people are nutso. Oh, and for reference, like, this is the first Rosemary on the right. This is the second Rosemary. Here's some of his kids. Like, just for reference. These some more of the kids. These people quite literally at some points never actually went outside and met anyone. Some of these children literally never spoke to another human being that wasn't their family members. Oh God, you went to an art school? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, no, they're never really secretive about it. That's how I wonder how these people get away with it so well. They're never hiding it. They're never hiding it. It's just so out there in the open, and then they get away with it. Like, it's just, everyone feels like they can't do something. You can call the cops, man. Like, I despise the police. I really do. But, like, you call the cops for that reason, okay? You save a kid if you can. This theory coincides with the suicide pact that the family had devised some years ago. If authorities had tried to break the family up, the children were to kill each other. According to one of Wesson's surviving daughters, the older ones would kill the children and then commit suicide. Prosecutors, on the other hand, claim Wesson shot all victims and that the evidence speaks for itself. Judge Lawrence Jones rules that there is sufficient evidence for Weston to stand trial on charges he killed 9 of his children. If convicted, he could receive the death penalty. Which, let me just mention, this dude ain't dead. They haven't executed this man yet. All of this took place in 2005, and he has been sitting on death row since then. I thought this shit happened in the 80s. No, it started in the 80s. He did this stuff for like 20 years. That's why I think they were never talked to. That, honestly, dude, there are more families like that than you could imagine. Like, there was a kid that used to live on my street when I was a kid living in Upper Cincinnati, and they were homeschooled. And they would be outside and playing, and me and my sister would go over there and try to play with them, and we'd get maybe 10 minutes with these kids before their parents would come out, yell at us, and then bring their kids inside, and then we wouldn't see them for another month until, like, we snuck over there, saw them playing, and tried to play with them again. Like, a lot of people are actually like this. There's a show on TLC about these super conservative parents who, like, they homeschool their kids. They're not allowed to listen to rock and roll or country, and they can only listen to gospel. And, like, I watched that a little bit, and it just screams. It screams this kind of shit. It's not that people think they can't do anything. It's that they think it's super weird and don't want to be a part of it. Okay. I get thinking someone's super weird and not wanting to be a part of someone's super weird shit. But sometimes you can kind of just look and be like, that's weird. And sometimes you're like, that ain't right. This is definitely that ain't right kind of shit. Were you the bad kids in the neighborhood? No, we were actually the quiet kids. We were like the quiet little nerdy kids that none of the other kids wanted to play with because, like, we were weird. Because we didn't have cable and we didn't listen to the same music that they listened to. And, like, my mom was a huge horror fan, so, like, I would go to school and talk about ghosts and stuff like that, and I'd scare all the other kids, but I'll do a story time one time. We weren't the bad kids, we were just the weird kids. And then there were kids weirder than us who literally just didn't have friends, and that was the homeschool kids. Prosecutors, on the other hand, claim Wesson shot... Okay. Other testimony at the hearing included allegations of sexual and physical abuse by Wesson. It was claimed that Wesson started molesting his daughters when they were as young as 5 years old. When one of the girls became pregnant, she was told by Wesson to say she had been artificially inseminated. Why did he think that was going to work? I live in Florida. I see it every day. It's almost... Okay, that's accurate, but Florida has a shit ton of weirdos, and I love the Sunshine Law. I love the Sunshine Law. Just... Hell, I'll do a whole episode of nothing but Florida Man at some point. In another bizarre twist, Wesson sent a letter to the Fresno Bee telling them about the biographical book he had written. The book, In the Night of the Light for the Dark, was rejected in 2002 by a New York publishing company. Wesson is due back in court April 27th with a trial date set to begin. He is charged with 9 counts of murder and 13 sex counts, which then was raised to 36. Including rape and molestation of girls younger than 14. R.L. Putnam, don't put on bad name to the R.L. Okay, we all respect R.L. Stein. Let's not accidentally throw this man's name in here. Was assigned to the case. Weston returned to court on April 27th and appears to have determined to get the trial underway. He would not waive his rights for a speedy trial and again pled not guilty to charges stemming from the murders. A trial date as of June 21st was set. Wesson faces 9 charges of murder and 7 rape charges, 5 counts of continued sexual abuse, and 2 counts of forced oral copulation. Why is that one forcibly in there? That seems weird to wedge in, or was there, like, evidence of that? A May 18th hearing was also set regarding release of 4 search warrants. Search warrants were considered public information unless information contained within the documents would jeopardize the case if released. It has not been determined whether Wesson will face a death penalty if found guilty. 2 of his sons were present in the courtroom. They said they were defending him. Update, attorneys for Marcus Wesson, Peter Jones, and Garrick Byers filed a motion on Wednesday, May 19th to dismiss murder charges against Wesson. They claim they have evidence that substantiate the fact that Sabrina Wesson, 25, died last. In their motion, they state that Sabrina's body was on top of the other children and that the gun was under her along with a knife. but doesn't say anyone was stabbed. Interesting, they keep bringing up the knife. Furthermore, they state that her wounds were consistent with suicide. According to their scenario, she allegedly killed the other 8 children and then herself. Well, then why'd he go back in the room? Wesson guilty on all 23 counts. Friday, June 17, 2015. Associated Press, Market Weston, a domineering patriarch of a clan bred through incest, was convicted Friday of murdering 9 of his children, whose bodies were found in a pile. Police standoff. Wesson's conviction on 9 counts of first-degree murder makes him eligible for the death penalty. He was also found guilty on all 14 counts of rape and molesting 7 of his underage daughters and nieces. So it went from 36 to 14. Okay. The jurors started deliberation on June 2nd, ultimately deciding that Wesson himself pulled the trigger. The defense had argued that Sabrina Wesson, 25, the oldest to die, killed herself as well as her siblings and the 1-year-old son she had with her father. Many of Wesson's surviving family members still support him. I think that honestly disgusts me the most, that anyone was left to support this man. I don't mean left alive to support him, but that they chose to stand next to or behind this man and say he's a good person. Like, what in the flying fuck? Wesson himself remained quiet and still. Several witnesses testified that Wesson had repeatedly coached the children to be ready to kill each other and themselves if authorities ever threatened to break up the clan. The prosecution said Wesson had plenty of time to shoot his children during the 80-minute standoff with police. They really cannot get their times right. On March 2nd, 2004, he had closed himself in a back bedroom with the victims, keeping out mothers whose attempt to get their children out of the home had prompted the police standoff to begin with. Prosecutor Lisa Gameoin, Ohioan, that looks like O-N, I don't know, said in closing arguments that even if Sabrina Wesson did pull the trigger, Marcus Wesson would still be found guilty if he encouraged her to kill them or was part of a conspiracy that led to their slaughter. The verdict read by the court clerk said that the panelists concluded he fired the weapons. Okay, but then it never says if he was sentenced to death. Was he sentenced to death? That is what I'm most curious about. Was convicted and also found guilty. Wesson was sentenced to death on June 27, 2005 and is currently in the San Quentin State Penitentiary. He is still alive. And the motherfucker's 74. This asshole is, this dude, I mean, I kind of wonder if, like, we just need a little bit of cowboy justice anymore, because this dude got to live a long and fulfilling life. He is 74. My daddy didn't make it to 74. Like, also, that's why I didn't stream yesterday. It was my dad's birthday, and we've been without him for 4 years, and it still really hurts. But again, my dad didn't even make it to 52, and this asshole got to live for a whole 22 fucking years longer than him, and he's sitting here fucking his own kids, making children with his own kids, and forming a goddamn cult. Hopefully he's a cell block fleshlight. I mean, I kind of don't wish rape upon anyone, and I don't think prison rape is okay either, because there are a whole lot of people that go through that who genuinely didn't deserve it, and there are a whole lot of people who perpetuate that as if it's like a realistic crime that should be like acceptable. I don't believe rape is right in any sense, unless we're talking about raping pedophiles, because I think there should be an executioner style person who just has like a spiked cod piece for every pedophile, and his job is just to have his way with them every day, so that maybe that person might fucking understand what they put someone else through. But I'm also a sick fuck 90% of the times, and I get really, really angry. Not cool until it's cool. I mean, very much that. That I know it's really too easy, but the thing is, like, you're not supposed to respond to violence with violence, because, you know, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. But also, if you don't make an example of these people, then you get, in my opinion, you get people like Maps on Twitter, minor attracted people who think that it's okay to contact kids or let the world know that they like kids. And like, it's fucking not okay. Y'all need to not exist. I understand if you're someone who genuinely has a problem and you go to a therapist and you go to a psychologist and you take yourself away from kids as much as possible. But like, if you're, I know, right? Don't want to see that shit. Let's play Pokemon. I don't want to have just been talking about kids and then go to Pokemon, man. That feels weird. But, we are going to go ahead and get into the game. Poke me right in the eyeball. I mean, fucking accuracies, bro. Like, honestly. Alright. Shit. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for sticking around so long. Thank you for making the chat awesome. Thank you for sticking around for the entire horrible true crime segment earlier. Anyone who was here. I'm going to be doing true crime on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and like I said, Tuesday we're going to do the case of the guy who killed his kid because of the QAnon conspiracies, and Thursday we're going to be doing the case of the guy who killed his son for finding pictures of him in a diaper and eating his own poo-poo. Okay, so fun. Yes, besides that, make sure to go check out all of my links. I got my link tree down there. Please make sure to go check out my Onlyfans. I am le poor and I need all the help I can get. If you would like, please drop a sub here. I would super appreciate that. Make sure to eat a good dinner, stay hydrated, stay cool out there, kids. And Dahmer, have a great day on your date. Hopefully you'll be by tomorrow so I can say that again. But yeah, please stick around for Horror Show Harry and closer. Closer.